normally the studio would design their own equipment, and half the time they would build their own. Yeah. The way you did monitoring that, I mean, when you had mono, you hung up one speaker. When you had stereo, you hung up two speakers. 3-track, you hung up 3 speakers. And then 4-track, you always had 4 speakers across the front. Once you went to the 4-track, then you started doing overdub. They said, well, we've got vocals here, we've got brass here, and we've got strings here. So they would actually basically overdub through the console. They would have one channel in record, and the other would be playing, so they didn't have any separate monitor for it. But then when we went to the 8-track, one of the things we didn't want to build a complete new monitor system, so we decided we'd actually use the tape recorder as the line amp for the system, and then monitor off of the tape recorder. So all of a sudden they found out, well, we can take and put the tracks all in sync, put one in record, and we don't have to go back through the console. I came out to Los Angeles to look around, and A&M in their first 8-track studio had eight speakers hung up in it. So what I did, I made a thing which really was a prototype, the first monitor mix. And we took the 8 pots, mixed them down to 4 tracks, so we could actually mix the 8-track output to 4 tracks to put into the 4-channel monitor. We then took Q then off of the 4-track, because we already had a 4-track Q system. And that was the first monitor mix. About every year or two, studios were forced to buy new consoles because new technology would come along. Like A&R was the first 8-track studio in New York, and then 16-track came along, which they used the old Ampex video recorder and made 16-track 2-inch tape. And it was a hard time for studios at the time. Well, like A&R was fully invested in 4 8-track studios, and here's a competitor can build, across the street can build a single studio 16-track, new technology, and start taking business. So, but it was great for consoles because you have an 8-track console. Well, next year you're going to have a 16-track console, and then they came up with 24-track tape recorders on 2-inch tape. You've got to have 24-track consoles. So almost every year the recording people were upgrading their facilities from 8-track to 16-track to 24-track and on. One of the other things I had done at Fine Recording, again, Bob had film dubbing theater. He had music studios, but he also had a tape duplication operation in the basement. And then that's the time when 8-track tape, which again was, you only played 2 tracks at a time, but had 8 tracks on the tape. You had to lubricate the tape with graphite so it could slip all the time because it was an endless loop. But for the master, we had to make a 1-inch 8-track. So we put together, I built my first 8-track recorder then using Ampex 300, and basically learned how difficult that is, because again, the 300 was built for 1/4 inch or 1/2 inch, and it's surprising how poorly it worked with 1 inch. To try and get that tape path straight. First thing I noticed, you started up and the tape would go across the heads like that. So I learned a lot about handling 1-inch tape there. We went to an AS show, and I would say this must have been around, I'm going to say something like 69, and Scully had their first 1-inch 8-track recorder there. And I looked at it at the show, and the tape was just going right, straight, smooth across the heads. And I said, this is the one we want. So we bought that machine and put in the first commercial 8-track And the first thing I said, you know, I am not going to hang up 8 speakers. Although a lot of people did.